I'm William Shatner. I've done a lot of things in my career, but this takes the cake. This is so cool. You, Joseph, today, it's all about you. You won the internet. Congratulations. It's exciting. It makes me want to celebrate. Makes me want to get up out of this chair. Makes me want to sing. Makes me want to dance. Makes me want to shout. Kick my heels up. Throw my hands up. Toss my head back. No, really, people should be shouting your name in the street.
Come on now. Sing
that song.
Joseph,
Sing it out loud.
Joseph.
I want to celebrate. Put it up in lights. See, no one else deserves to be celebrated like you because you are the best.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. I'm kind of famous. I'm Jerry Springer. And Jaffe is no host. He'd be lucky to be in my audience, let alone on my show. Well, maybe he's crazy enough to be on my show. I take that back. And that's not a good thing.
When it comes to chicken, I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
But by the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
And it was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph Jaffe.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? Well, hello, everybody. It is good to be back. It is good to be back in the United States and America, as Borat would say. I am thrilled. I am as tickled pink. I am as thrilled as Punch. Can you be thrilled as Punch? I don't know, whatever, because I can see Doc Searls in the green room, and he is smiling or fake laughing. I'm not sure which one it is. But if he is entertained, then surely, are you not entertained? You watching, welcome. It is May 31st. I'm back. I was away. I was in South Africa visiting my high maintenance mother. Just kidding. She is watching. Hello, Ma. I'm sure you prefer me in person, but I know at the same time that you really do love the show, and you are going to love Doc Searls, because let me tell you, the word OG does not come close to defining Doc Searls. And look who's here. Anna Kaznenska from the Ukraine. We are sending only good vibes. The show is about hope, positivity, and optimism. Anna, I don't know you, but you are in my prayers every single day, I promise you. And Bob Farnham is here, all the way from a faraway land called Vermont. Well, not as exciting as Ukraine, but maybe that's a good thing. But we hope for peaceful, boring times to the Ukraine very, very soon. And I hope that we can inspire you and give you some distraction during these crazy, crazy times. The world is crazy. I mean, I don't think I've ever been this unprepared and yet prepared for an episode of my show. I've been away. I'm getting back into it. And guess what? You are very welcome, Anna. Today, this show is brought to you by Alpha Collective. I am launching Alpha Collective. In fact, it is launched. It is launched right now. Right now, you can go to alphacollective.xyz and you can buy a membership pass. Wow, this is crazy. It's actually, to be honest with you, just a little emotional, maybe a lot emotional, but it is minting now. The Alpha Collective sponsors this show and every other episode until I get a real sponsor. Just kidding. It's a premium community that helps corporates and degens partner and win at the business of Web3. This is a little video, a walkthrough, myself and my friend Brian Fanzo. And you can buy with fiat, not with a car, but with USD. You can literally go right now, and let's just see even if that works. I think it does. And you can buy a membership pass. It's $2,500, or you can buy with crypto. And that link is live. It would open up my MetaMask. In fact, just to show you what it looks like, it's literally just gone live right now. So once you once you connect, Freudian, and commit, you will see how many have been sold. And actually, what I'm doing today, because Doc Searls is going to teach you a thing or two. Let me tell you. I think I got to go and look at my notes now, but he's got a new term, and I mean, wow, I'm in the presence of absolute greatness today. He's going to talk about many things, but customer commons. Well, I know what Creative Commons is. I know what customer obsession is. I don't know what customer commons is. But we're going to find out as well. When you take a customer-centric approach, a lens to everything, well, in fact, the first 100 passes that are minted today will get a very special status. Your metadata will read first customer. What does that mean? Well, it means you are one of the first 100 to buy, and special things will fall into your lap. There will be surprises and delights. I will go over and above for my first customers, because at the end of the day, your first customer is everything. Your first customer is everything and anything. And so I suppose I should probably even tell you where to go. I'm just so excited. There is a lot of verbal diarrhea going on right now, a lot of verbal diarrhea. I want you just to go and check it out. Just check it out, for God's sake, check it out. You don't have to connect, buy, but alphacollective.xyz, it is my baby, it is my vision. And I believe the mission to build a bridge between the corporate and the startup worlds. I've always believed that with my previous company, Evolution, and now with Alpha Collective. So it is time to get on with the show, because you are here to hear from Doc Searls. And I'm going to get straight into the seated soliloquy. And the seated soliloquy today, a little bit of an homage to Brian Fanzo, is called Press the Damn Button. Now, this is something that Brian talks about a lot. He says, press the damn button. Stop procrastinating. Stop trying to be perfect, because perfection is an illusion. What is perfection? Do you ever get to 100%? Is there such a thing? I don't think so. I don't think there is such a thing as 100%, because, even if you look at penny stocks these days, if you look at crypto, it can always go lower, but it can get to 0.000001. But the same is true about getting to 100%. I have to tell you that Alpha Collective, I go back and I look at the original goal was to launch 2222, and then it became 22222, and then it became March 1st, and then it kept on moving and moving and moving, and it was meant to be last week. And you know what? Today I just said, press the damn button. Go live. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let the chips fall where they may. Whether one person buys, whether 100 people buy, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. Sometimes you've just got to be able to commit. You've just got to be able to make it happen. I've always said my motto, and I'm a brand guy, I'm a marketing guy, is Nike's 3 words, which, what if they ever change it in my lifetime, I will truly, truly be disappointed. Just do it. Just do it. It's even less words than press the damn button. But sometimes we've just got to be able to put ourselves out there. Be prepared to fall. Be prepared to fail. But I'm tired of all this idea of, failure is a stepping stone. Sure it is. We all know that. But people are afraid to fail, so much so that they never press the button. They never press the damn button. They're so afraid of what might happen that they never ever get to find out if that thing could have even happened in the first place. Now, Dan Pink was on the show, and he wrote a book called Regrets. I've had a few. Well, we're not going to go into Frank Sinatra, but what he said is, as you get older, very appropriate having Doc Searls, we're going to talk about how life begins at 50. As you get older, all your regrets are regrets of inaction, not regrets of action. You never regret the stuff you did, only the stuff that you didn't do. So Alpha Collective is out there. It is born. Let the chips fall where they may, as I said earlier. But right now, I can never, ever say that the regrets that I have will be ones of inaction. They will be regrets. Well, there won't be regrets in the sense of being able to say, I didn't want them. What Dan teaches us is when you look back and you learn from them, it propels you, it moves you, it elevates you to move forward. And you know what? Moving forward is exactly what we're about to do right now. So now it is time to welcome, true leaders, incredible people in this world. They don't send me, 10,000 word bios. They just say, Doc is a veteran author, journalist, blogger, podcaster, academic, and advocate of the free and open internet and of free and open software and hardware. That's pretty much all you need to know, except for the fact he probably has a Wikipedia entry for every single one of them. Doc Searls, welcome to the show.
Oh, glad to be here. Glad to be here. One reason I was smiling earlier is that Jamal Mashburn, the Monster Mash, is one of your former guests. I'm an old basketball fan, so I dug that.
He was actually my favorite guest until you, believe it or not.
I'll have to top Jamal. Very good.
You know what? And that would take some doing because he has a slight height advantage.
Like a whole foot. Yeah.
So, Doc, there's so much to talk about. I can't believe, look, first of all, I mean, the one thing about procrastinating and not pushing the damn button is that I've had you on my agenda and my radar probably since guest number 2. Guest number 1 was my sister. So I have to have priorities. But you are the co-founder of Customer Commons. So, before we get into the other stuff, tell us about Customer Commons, because I'm a word guy, and immediately I see that and I go, wait a second. As I said in my soliloquy, I know what Creative Commons is, or maybe before. What is Customer Commons?
Well, it has that name in part because Creative Commons is known, and it's where Creative Commons is the place where there are a collection of copyrights that one can invoke, and that's where they're stored. And you could say, here's my copyright that requires attribution only. Here's the one that requires non-commercial attribution and non-commercial use. There are like 6 variants, and it seemed to us, the collection of us this is about 2013 or so, who thought we needed a similar thing for the terms that we proffer as individuals. I mean, all the time online and in the digital world as we have it so far, we are compelled to agree to terms of others that are always coercive and one-sided and basically screw us over. That's what happens every time you click one of those consent things on a website. In fact, if you don't go in and adjust them to your preferences, which really aren't your preferences, the ones they provide, and you have no record of them afterwards, it's a completely lopsided thing. We believe for some time that the internet is basically a peer-to-peer thing. At the base level, it's a way any 2 parties at any distance can exchange files or look at each other or talk or do whatever they're doing. It is inherently peer-to-peer. It doesn't require that you have a server running everything. It doesn't require that you have an internet giant arbitrating everything for you. It's an incredibly liberating thing. And then we went right away and just put it on the mainframe model where we're always the subordinate party. Well, the idea with Customer Commons originally was this is where the terms that you have would live, and you could point to them and say, you agree to my terms. And one, for example, the one we've developed so far, the only one so far, it's called No Stalking. And it's perfect for any website that wants to do advertising that isn't based on tracking. And it says, go ahead and show me ads, just make sure they're not based on tracking me. Which, by the way, is the kind of advertising we had since forever, and is the kind of advertising that made every brand name known to the world. So it's not like a bad kind of advertising. So that's what we've done more recently, however, is have a kind of broader mission which is on the front page of it, is at customercommons.org, to restore the balance of power, respect, and trust between individuals and the organizations that serve them. Companies can learn so much more from customers on the customers' systems than they could ever learn on their own. Marketing, which I was involved in for much of my adult life, has always assumed that it bears the entire responsibility for relationship. The problem is you get different relationships with every different company that you encounter, and all of them have their own very closed and proprietary ways of dealing with you, rather than you having one way to deal with, one way to do not just terms, but also subscriptions, do loyalty, do what we call intent casting, which is, hey, I need a stroller for twins downtown in the next 2 hours. Who's coming through? Without having to go do a search, do the Google search thing or go on to Craigslist or some other place like that, but on the open internet, be able to express a request for a quote while being anonymous. These are all doable things. We can
Wait a second. You mean as opposed to going to American Airlines and looking for a flight to San Francisco on browser, and then going to Instagram and having a message from American Airlines going, still looking to complete that booking to San Francisco? You mean like that?
Yeah. Well, right now we live in a very lopsided world where we've done, we came into the internet as peers, and we basically rolled forward the industrial model. The industry won the Industrial Revolution about 150 years ago, and at that point we became consumers rather than customers, and nothing wrong with that. We've derived enormous benefits from that, but leaving the entirety of the way we relate to companies up to companies separately and not up to us has left us in a very, relatively speaking, powerless position. So the idea is simply that, it'll be better for American Airlines if I let all the airlines know, hey, I'm looking for a flight to San Francisco, but I'm willing to pay for a big bag, for a window seat or a particular aisle seat, or for food, or I am on record with having 2.5 million miles, say, with Delta, that have never been any trouble whatsoever, and I've been helpful. And there are lots of ways that we can communicate with multiple providers without having to fall into databases for marketers to do guesswork at us on a constant basis. And that guesswork can be done on a constant basis because we have this lopsided system set up whereby we can be spied upon by pretty much everybody and everything, over which we have almost no control. And it's fully rationalized, and it's immoral in the extreme, and we need to fix it. But I don't think we can fix it inside the existing systems. I think we need new ones. That's what Customer Commons is about.
I love it. And look, I have to tell you that, first of all, I lied to you. When I said the stalking, you might want to apply the stalking mandate on me, because I said I've had you in mind since episode 2, guest 2. Turns out 14 years ago, it's crazy. This happened to jump in front of me from Facebook. This was the president. Can you believe it? I mean, this literally happened to me a couple weeks ago, and it said 14 years ago. And it's I saw this, and it absolutely blew me away. And this is kind of one of those, I guess, systems that you were talking about, using just simple, is it Boolean? Is that the right word? Logic? If, then, and, but, or?
Yeah, it's actually just standard programming logic at this point. I guess you could call it Boolean, but we use it all the time. If, then, and, or, else. Logic could be we should have our own logic, and it's really easy to understand, right? If I'm calling for tech support, then I don't want to hear a commercial message, and I'm willing to pay extra to reach a human in under 60 seconds. It's that's just one example of how we can improve the world by looking at it from the customer side. But again, we need solutions that are developed on the customer side rather than separately in every different company's silo. I mean, there's a guy I know who says that that Salesforce has one cloud supporting hundreds of thousands of companies, all of which use the same cloud to deal with customers in different ways. So there's no uniform experience that a customer has dealing with the hundreds of thousands of companies that are using Salesforce as a backend to do customer service. That's wrong. It's completely messed up. It's like having a different kind of cache for dealing with every company, or a different language for talking to everybody. We should have one way or one set of ways that are normalized to deal with many companies on fairly standardized and ordinary kinds of interaction.
There is a massive elephant in the room, and that elephant is neither a doctor or a Jaffe coin, and it's the fact that these companies, you said it would be better for the airlines if this tender could go out anonymously. It would be better if everyone used, and it's funny because I'm just going to do a caveat within the caveat, which is in this world where we talk, in this decentralized Web3 world, where we're moving away from one centralized platform or a one size that fits all. There's that, but there's this idea of how does it is not in the corporation's operating system or language to play nicely with one another, to collaborate, to cooperate, all in the name of their customer or even consumer. Why is it so difficult for companies to be able to figure, to come together for the betterment of ultimately their relationships with their customers?
Well, they can't. It's not one elephant in the room. It's hundreds of thousands of elephants, and they're not hurting animals. And there's some obvious things that escape everybody's attention. So, for example, it was not, if you look back before the internet showed up. Actually, go back to the PC. Before the internet showed up, before the PC showed up, nobody inside a company wanted a personal computer in there. They had mainframes. They didn't want you to have. They have dumb terminals, IBM 3270 display terminals, VT100s and 200s, and all the employees were terminals on that system. It was run by guys in white coats on raised floors in central places. But when PCs came in, and all of a sudden, employees could do more with PCs than they could with the corporate systems. And the PC kind of took over for that reason, because it was better for companies for everybody to have an independent PC on their desk rather than a dependent terminal of a centralized system. That was the first decentralization inside companies. After that, with the internet, what we have is a system by which companies do cooperate. It's called peering. But TCP/IP was not developed inside the corporate system. It was developed inside defense departments and universities, and by a bunch of geeks that simply wanted to be able to communicate across multiple disparate networks over a single protocol called TCP/IP. In a similar way with the web, HTTP made it possible for any two parties to show documents to each other. Both those things took off over the great objections, over the resistance of companies everywhere. And even once the internet became ubiquitous, starting roughly in 1995, companies were still saying, we don't really need the internet. We really don't need we'll put up a website as a kind of brochure, but we're not going to put our business there. We wouldn't trust our business to this insecure system. But what happened was individuals as independent entities doing positive things for companies, whether they liked it or not, stripped the gears of the closed systems that were there. We need the same thing to happen with business now. It's why the same thing that happened, the same resistance to the PC in 1982 and resistance to the internet in 1995 is around today in resistance to customer independence and customer agency and customer autonomy. But we're going to break it. It's going to take a long time. I thought we'd break it in 20 years ago or 22 years ago when we wrote the Cluetrain Manifesto. I thought we'd break it when I wrote the Intention Economy in 2012. We haven't broken it yet. And in fact, it's kind of, in certain ways, it's worse than ever. But the simple fact is there are too many things that individuals can bring to the marketplace that companies separately cannot, that are good for companies when they cooperate with customers and with each other. And that was the message in Cluetrain. It was the message in the Intention Economy. It's the message with Customer Commons. All these things are possible. but we have to work on it from the individual side. You know, it's happening now with something called self-sovereign identity, SSI. Look it up. Look up SSI and self-sovereign identity. You'll find there's a large collection of developers that are working on ways by which we can selectively disclose information about ourselves without saying, for example, who we are. Or we can say who we are without revealing more than is necessary. All you need to know is I'm over 18. I have a ticket to the show. I'm licensed to drive. Right, verifiable credentials. It's all about if we stop thinking of our ID as something that we have in our wallet that was given to us by, the DMV, and start thinking of, I have a bunch of verifiable credentials. I can show you those. All you need it's minimum disclosure for a constrained use, justifiable parties, individual autonomy, and consent going the other way. I'm going to tell you what you consent to, rather than I'm going to consent to your terms. All those things are embodied in SSI, and it's a happening thing that's happening in the world now. It's taken a long time though, and it may still take a long time before it plays out.
I mean, I kind of want to talk a little bit about timing and about being first. I always use the the analogy where a media boss came up to me and he said, Jaffe, my boy, he said, there are two types of people in this world, pioneers and settlers. The pioneers get shot and the settlers take the land. He said, you, my boy, are a pioneer. And I was like, thanks very much. But I felt like I'd always been 10 years ahead. Ironically, you just said you always felt that when we're talking in the green room, you felt like you were always 10 years ahead. I've always felt that, I mean, even when I wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot, and by the way, let's be very clear about where any of my ideas come from. Let's make sure this guy, but one of my chapters, one of my 10 bold approaches, alternatives to traditional advertising, was what I called communal marketing, which I defined as marketing to and through communities. Well, the term social media didn't exist, and nor did Facebook. So I think even back then, I was also looking for and seeing where I felt the puck was heading. And yet, I was not amongst the victors. I was on the sidelines when other people swooped in, like the Facebooks of the world. So now, for the first time in Web3, I feel like not only am I in the right place at the right time, but I have the ability to actually be a leader in the space. And maybe that's why, one of the reasons why I put the Alpha Collective together. And I just want to say a little bit of Alpha to share that. Wait for the air horn that Doc Searls, you're hearing it first, is going to be one of our Alpha Talk speakers. So Doc, thank you for accepting.
How could I not? I want to offer a possible correction on the pioneers versus settlers thing. I think what happens in most cases is that the pioneers don't get shot. They actually wander around in the wilderness for a long time, saying, there's uranium under here, and there's oil over there, and there's elk up there, and you can farm this land over here, and everybody's sitting back and somewhere else saying we're doing fine over. So I enjoy the now, by the way. I mean, I've always felt like I've dealt in the future and like you were saying, but I always enjoy what's going on at the moment too. So
I mean, they always refer to me as a wandering Jew. So now I understand.
Wondering and wandering, I suppose.
Yes,
I
was a wandering pioneer and a wandering Jew. You can figure out the two. By the way, Dr. Francine Hardaway says, Doc, how are you?
Francine's an actual doctor. I just have the nickname, like the dwarf.
I thought you were going to say an actual pioneer, a wanderer.
Oh, she's that too, definitely. And she's in the space where you are too. She's like all over it. And she has a great newsletter, by the way. Subscribe to it.
I know. And she's been on the show, and I saw her recently in Phoenix. We hugged each other, and I cannot confirm nor deny that I gave her COVID. So,
oh no,
allegedly.
Oh my
allegedly.
gosh.
But Glenn is here as well. He said he made it, so appreciate it. I love the idea. So we as pioneers, we are wondering as well. How do you incorporate timing? How do you how do you win in a business? Because even going back to Alpha Collective for a second, I spoke about winning at the business of Web3, but at the same time, I talk out of both sides of my mouth, because I say anyone who says they've figured it all out is either a liar or a fool or both. That's why I invite you to be an Alpha Talk speaker, because I haven't figured it out.
Well, it's one thing to figure that the world is round, it's another thing to sail around it, right? There, I think lots of us have something or other about the future figured out without actually, being able to do much about it, other than either wait or participate to the degree that we can. So I was thinking when you were saying timing that there's this old joke about comedy where Party A says, ask me what's the key to comedy, and the person says, what's the key to comedy, and the other person interrupts and says, timing. You're right in the middle of it. So,
and a laugh track.
It's a deconstructed joke right there, but that's you have to, getting anything right. It's kind of like it's almost like the COVID thing. We talk about it. It's a terrible metaphor to call something viral, but how does something viral? How does a virus actually work? Right? It comes out of some place and it spreads all over the world, or it doesn't, or spreads somewhat. And it's hard. It's hard to say. There's a kind of, I think there's a parallel between what's happening now with the internet and what they call the Columbian Exchange, which is sometime after Columbus discovered the New World, which was an old world for the natives, but and we started to exchange everything everywhere. I mean, I'm in California right now. If I fly from here to Australia, it'll look familiar, but that's because bottle brush plants and eucalyptus trees, which I'm familiar with in California, actually came from Australia. Oranges came from Kazakhstan, and cotton, I guess, from Egypt or something. And all these things are spread all over the world. Anything that could grow anywhere is everywhere else. And this isn't necessarily a good thing for the world, but it's one of the ways that we deal. And disease is another thing. It makes the world healthier that people are exposed to many pathogens over time, so they're more tolerant of all the pathogens, even if some of them die of some of them. And I really think that one of the things, I put it in the chat, and this is one of the things that's in the front of my mind right now. I didn't put it in your little prep document, but I maybe should have, which is there are more ways than ever right now for any one of us to wreck the world. And there are also more ways for any one of us to make it better or to save it. My mother used to say when I was a kid, our choice is always to hurt or to help. And it's much easier to hurt than it is to help. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's a victim, or is at least aware of it, that he is a victim actually, that of bad actors, misinformation and all that kind of stuff. That one of the things that happens when there's an attack like there was in Texas a few days ago is that the conspiracy people will come in and say this actually didn't happen, and spread all kinds of lies about that, because they do that every time it happens. And one of the ways that the bereaved have to prepare is that they have to be told that they know they're going to get told that their child actually didn't die and it was all part of a hoax. And that's one of the ways you can hurt the world. It's too easy right now for anybody to do that, but it's also, I think it should be easy for any of us to help as well. How do we start organizing the latter in a way that is viral? And I don't know the answer to that. I just know that we have put in the world so many tools that allow any of us to become, you say you're not, but you are famous, right? We can.
I'm a legend in my own mind.
Yeah, and more than that, and there's a, I've had several experiences of having something go viral or participating in it. Open source is one, Linux is another, Cluetrain is another. I really wish that the intention economy was. Customer Commons might be. I want those things to succeed, but I don't know. Trying it's too many times. We're trying to set fire to wet logs with a match. But there's no kindling. Where do we find the kindling? where do we get the blowtorch that's going to start this thing? Where do we get the gasoline to make it happen?
Well, I have an answer for that.
Okay.
I think the kindling is going to, and this is something actually that that I've been developing a little bit. I wrote a Enjoying the Conversation, a history of media. I mean, I know we're going to talk about, if there's time, which there won't be, Marshall McLuhan. But I basically said from the one to many, which was the shotgun, the spray and pray approach. Actually, when I first did it, I called it the Dick Cheney approach because he just shot his friend in the face with a shotgun. And we moved from the one to many to one to one, the whole CRM relationship marketing. And then we moved to what I called at the time was the most revolutionary transformational moment in marketing, certainly in my lifetime, which is one from one, which was search, pull, which is the beginning of the intention economy. And then I purported, I just wanted to use that word, that we were now moving to the many to many model. And that was the conversation, the amorphous conversation, that there was no alpha, no omega, no one in the middle. The customer wasn't in the middle. Customers just trying to make ends meet. The brand wasn't in the middle. And then I made a little kind of snarky, like little footnote, which is maybe we're moving back to the one to many, except now the one is the customer and the many is all the brands out there. And I was really just talking about how, the Comcast technician falling asleep on the couch, these stories went viral. But actually, my point of view now is that we are moving to what I call the sum to sum model. So whether it's a PFP collection with 10,000 memberships or NFTs, or whether it's Alpha Collective with 1,000, sum to sum, it's smaller, it's contained, it is pure, it is incredibly concentrated and powerful, where like minds come together. We can't make heads or tails with the world, with everything out there. And so the sum to sum becomes now this pocket, this community where there is kindling, where flames are ignited, where you don't suffer from a lack of oxygen or not enough oxygen. And then, of course, the sums unite with the other sums. And so there is now still re-aggregation that happens when all these communities partner, collaborate, join forces. But it's just, I would love to hear your thoughts on sum to sum. But I guess my point was the kindling comes from relationships. The kindling comes from our ability to choose life and light. And I think that's what I'm taking away from you. We can choose to be good or evil. We can choose to help ourselves or help others. And in some cases, we can help ourselves by helping others, or help ourselves and help others. And so that's my hope. That's why I believe your time is right now. My time is right now. Our time is right now. And the intention economy is the backbone of all of this.
I hope so. I've had experience with the one to some or some to some with open source and free software. And there was a population, the many there, and this is my experience with Linux Journal. It's also my experience with Floss Weekly, which is a podcast that I do. It's on the Twit network and have been doing for the last 2 years, but it's a 15-year-old podcast. It has like about 15,000 weekly consumers. Some watch it, most people listen to it as a podcast. I don't think it's going to grow above that, because that's the community. That is the size of that. Linux Journal was very similar. We had 10 to 20,000 regular readers that subscribed, paid money for it, but it wasn't more than that. It didn't get any bigger than that. Reality 2.0 is another thing. You're showing that now. That's a different podcast that came out of Linux Journal. It's less technical. It's a little bit more broad, but it's smaller so far. It's much younger. But that's a community that has had enormous influence as a secondary effect, as a second order effect. In other words, not the whole world didn't get into open source. They started talking about open source, and they learned what open source meant, or close enough, but they weren't doing open source development. And most open source developers now aren't actually working down close to the metal, as it were. They're working on further higher up, and they're they're doing it on their Macs and their Windows machines rather than on a Linux machine. That's a separate topic, but let me go back to the idea of conversation, because I started talking about markets and conversations like in the 80s, when I was working for an ad agency. I was a partner in an ad agency. And that didn't take off until I got together with 3 other people and wrote the Cluetrain Manifesto, where the first thesis in the Cluetrain Manifesto was markets and conversations. And that took off. And it took off with marketers. And not necessarily in a way that we wanted. It was very much it's a one-liner. But here's an interesting thing you're showing right now, the 10th anniversary edition. So a quick story. I was riding in a plane in the year 2000, the year that the Cluetrain Manifesto original edition came out, and I found myself in the back row with this guy named Shayo Ajiboye. He was from Nigeria. He's a theologian, had translated the Bible to Yoruba, spoke a whole bunch of languages. Brilliant dude. And we did the what you do, what I do thing. And we were flying from LA to New York. And I told him I was on a junket. I was going to talk about this book, The Cluetrain Manifesto. He said, well, tell me about it. And I showed him a chapter in it called Markets and Conversations. He said, that's good. That's very smart for a guy from the first world. But let's say you're in my world, in a rural community somewhere, and there's a marketplace, but there are no brands here. There are just a bunch of people selling stuff. You go up to a seller, and he took one of those pillows with a handy wipe on it, and he said, let's say this is a garment. You want this garment. You're looking at this garment. What do you say to the seller? I said, what does it cost? He said, you would say that. In your culture, that's the first thing that matters. But what happens if you have a conversation that lasts 20 minutes? What happens to the price after the 20 minutes? I said, well, maybe I'm willing to pay more and he's willing to charge less. And he said, right, what do you have now? And it was a very Socratic exchange. I said, I don't know. He said, you have a relationship. And he said, in your culture, you've maximized transaction. Everything that happens in a market is 3 things. There's transaction, conversation, and relationship. Transaction is where you're really strong. Relationship is where my culture is really strong. Conversation is in the middle of that. But you need to talk about relationship. That's really my assignment to you. So I have a chapter in that 10th anniversary edition called Markets or Relationships. That's the one that you have on there right now. And that's really what we wanted to do with Customer Commons and the rest of it. And I think relationship is behind what you'll get with the sum to sum model, I think. But where things kind of go viral outside of that, I think you have lots of secondary, tertiary, and quaternary kind of effects that come out of that aren't necessarily in the community, but are effects of the community. I mean, let's take the Internet of Things. There is in the world right now some really great code for cataloging everything we own. Okay, here's some glasses that I got from Costco. In fact, are these the ones? No, I don't have. They're in another one over there. They've fallen apart. I want to let them know that I have this, and I have a record of it. They can also have a record of it, but I'm not in their database. They're in my database, and we can communicate over that. There's something called a PICO, persistent compute object. That's one of the ways of doing that. These glasses don't have to be smart for me to put them in a cloud of their own that's programmable. And the internet of everything I own, all the books over there, the clocks, the thermometer there that tells me the humidity, my printer, old CD players and things, all of these things are my property. If I have a record of them, independent of them, that's not necessarily, the record is smart, but they are not, we can change. What I'm saying is the code is in the world now that we can make the Internet of Things, not the Google of things and the Apple of things and the Amazon of things, which is the closed corporate way those stupid companies are thinking about those things, but rather the individual's property of things that can have my experience using, these glasses, this phone, that hard drive, this mic stand, this mouse, this is actually from Best Buy and not from Logitech. It's a knockoff of Logitech's. I like it a little bit better than Logitech's. I like to let Best Buy know why I think this one is better. But I want it in my records that I can share with them and share my experience with that without getting inundated by marketing for crap I don't want. That's a much better way to work the world than we have now. Now, what The development community for Picos is a few people in Utah right now. It's not much larger than that. I'd like it to be larger than that, but we'll see. I mean, there's so many ways we can fertilize these things, but most of the VCs want to create unicorns rather than small effects that become larger and larger and larger effects that they may not be able to profit out of, but will create a world where a lot more profit can be made by everybody.
I have some builds on what you were saying. First of all, I jotted down the customer of things from or the customers things. But really, but before I build on them, we got a few comments. Bill Wendell said, "Some to some might be a good time in housing market as headlines over the past 10 days. Real estate frenzy over price correction unfolding. Sellers starting to freak out. Time for #intend to sell and #intend to buy."
Bill, I have to say, is one of the alpha members of Project VRM, which is something I'm still running, meaning I have something on a server at the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard, and he's local. He's in Cambridge, also a Harvard grad. He played football at Harvard. He doesn't want people to know that, but he did.
I think this was part of VRM, wasn't it?
What Bill has forgotten more about real estate than anybody else will ever know. He's brilliant, and real estate is crying out for a fix right now, and you'll never get it from Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com and those guys. You're going to get it from the people buying and selling homes, and not even from the realtors that are in the middle right now. You need people working for the customer like Bill does. That's how it's going to happen. And I also just stuck in the chat Pico Labs, which is what I just mentioned about the Internet of Things, or the Internet of the Customers things.
You also said earlier, if you average Vermont and Ukraine, do you get Iceland?
I was thinking geographically, because
not every comment in the chat has been insightful. I'm just kidding. But Francine actually said something interesting. She says a lot of things that are interesting.
Only things, I think.
Only things, including the fact that it was worth meeting me in person. So there you go. I gave a big hug and a big kiss as well. So we're going to go back to actually Web3, because I think it's very relevant. But so a couple things, when I wrote Join the Conversation, instead of talking about social media, I said how to engage marketing weary consumers through the power of community, dialogue, and partnership. And I actually thought maybe the evolution of markets are, right? Markets are conversations, markets are relationships. Maybe it's markets are collaborations. Maybe that's the idea of,
I think that works.
Equal and opposite, that it takes two to meet somewhere in the middle. I wanted to go back to Web3 because another build is Web 1 was read, Web 2 read, write, Web 3 according to the way I look at it is read, write, reward. But Francine says, isn't that what the blockchain can do? And in listening to you, I think maybe the intention economy, this is, whether it's a universal customer ID, whether all of our data now is housed in our wallets. I think the promise and potential of everything you're talking about now, whether it's reward, whether it's markets or collaborations, maybe it is this Web3, whether you call it revolution or evolution, maybe it is now finally the decentralized nature of it that will allow all of this to come to pass.
Well, I tend to think in terms of distributed and independent rather than decentralized. And I'm actually going back to Paul Barron's original drawings. Paul Barron designed the internet in a way when he had these three drawings that were centralized, decentralized, and distributed. And the internet is distributed by design. All of us are distributed, meaning scattered, as it were. Not necessarily somebody has cast them out, but like they've distributed seeds, but rather we are all independent, and there's maximized optionality about who and what we connect to and through and the rest of it. But I think beyond distributed, it's independent. I think all of us need to be independent. As for blockchain, I agree. I think blockchain is a big deal, and I think it has enormous promise. I also think it's so early, because even within SSI, for example, which I mentioned earlier, self-sovereign identity, the original ideas about it had to do with blockchain, that this is where things would live. They would live on the blockchain. But there are alternatives to that. There's one called KERI, KERI. I forget what it stands for, but where the blockchain is not required. I think that there's just so much. I think we're really early in whatever this becomes. Web3 is a good name for it, but I think we lost something when we went from Web 1 to Web 2. I was, my blog, which I started in 1999, and by 2006, I had up to 50,000 readers a day. I felt like I was running a daily paper. And these are readers, and these are people who subscribed to my RSS feeds. And along came, and the idea with blogging was that any one of us could be publishers on our own platforms. And early on, though my blog wasn't on it necessarily, but Searls.com, my domain, was in a server under my desk. I had my own email in a server under my desk. I had 16 IP addresses that were mine, that were my places on the internet where I could publish and subscribe. I was an equal, even though I was not much faster than dial-up at that time. Yeah, I mean, Searls.com right now only has my little bio on it, but I have, my email is doc@searls.com if anybody wants to write to me. But there was independence to that. I was not just distributed, I was independent. I could associate with anybody. But what happened when social media came along is that all the bloggers, went to Facebook and Twitter, which are really inferior ways to talk to other people, and where everything just goes to the great forgettery. It's all snow on the water. And I have dozens. I mean, I'm hardly blogging anymore, frankly. I mean, because I have dozens of readers, and they're loyal. But I tweet a fair amount, but I have 25,000 or so followers there. But I just found out recently, only 13% of which are fraudulent, which is a low number. But I think with tweeting, it's kind of like, to tweet is kind of like being a parking space. A parking space is, may have, followers that are the 40,000 cars that pass it every day, but it only engages 10, right? That's kind of the Twitter model of things. Of course, you can start trouble on Twitter. This much rather easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we lost something. I mean, once we lost ISPs made it easy for any one of us to be independent. But now that the ISP is your cable company, and the cable company doesn't want you to have your own IP address. Oh, you want your own IP address? We can do that for you as a business customer for hundreds of dollars a month or something like that, and everybody wants to put their server in the cloud now anyway, because you can do more with it that way. And I worry about the Web 1, 2, and 3 still being stuck on the client-server model. The client-server model might as well have been called the slave-master model. We've called it the calf-cow model, where you're the calf going to the cow of the website for the milk of HTML and cookies. And I think there are better models than that we've hardly touched. So I see hope in Web3 in the sense that it's seen as a new stage, and that things are seen as decentralized. But I think we need to go past decentralization to something where we're all independent, but we can engage socially in our own ways with a cohort or a set of cohorts that are truly ours. But it's going to be tough. I mean, it's so easy. You want to have a reunion, go ahead and, your college class reunion, go ahead and set it up on Facebook. It's too easy. Just do it. There are enough old people on Facebook to, want to participate, and they will. I hate to say that, but there it is.
No, and you know what? What's so amazing about what you're talking about, I was just looking at sometimes, I mean, here's a comment from Facebook, just from Facebook user. I cannot confirm or deny.
Exactly. No, that's true.
It's not, I don't know if this is Mark Zuckerberg, but he sometimes does troll me. But this comment says, I get a lot more interaction on Facebook posts than I did on my blog. Facebook made my family bloggers and commenters. And
yeah.
and and by the way, Francine says this conversation is making me so happy.
Oh, that's great. One of my goals in life is to make Francine happy.
Me too. And then Facebook users said it's true, but we don't know if now.
Yeah, but it's
what you,
so I was spoiled. Okay, the 50,000 readers I had, or up to, it wasn't that every day, but I mean, it was 4,000 or 5,000 a day at least. These are intelligent people. All the comments were good. Everything, I mean, I had a sense of real leverage in the world. It's true. Right now, I get more action off of something I post in Facebook than in something or Twitter than I do on my blog. Not always, but often. But again, it's like snow on the water. And yeah, all my, many of my relatives are now in their own way bloggers and commenters. There are brilliant people who ought to be blogging that are writing snarky posts on Facebook people I love that are really, I want them to be publishing on their own and in really, reputable publications where what they write is archived and won't be forgotten. And instead they're posting rants on Facebook. They get engagement, but what the hell's that worth? I mean, really, I mean, I get it. Steve Jobs said, do you want to make a dent in the universe or not? The universe needs dents right now. I think, our whole species is a dent in the universe, but we've only got about another 500 million years. And if somebody obsessed with geology, which I am, it's not that long. The sun's going to get hot and big and it'll all be gone. What do we
the universe needs dents. And hopefully, we're making some of those dents today on the show. Francine, by the way, I know has been doing some amazing work with Substack.
Yeah,
but
she's doing Substack. I just have to interrupt for this, okay? I would be on Substack tomorrow if it didn't spy on people, okay? It's rigged to spy on the people who read it. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but it is. Now, please, somebody come along and say that's wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, correct me on that. But last I looked, you couldn't turn it off, and you can with some other alternatives. But Substack's great. I read Francine there. I read lots of other people on Substack. They do it really well. I think newsletters are great, but the spying imperative is so strong. What can I say?
Well, I was going to kind of, very clumsily do a little bit of a mention back to saying Doc Searls is going to be one of maybe the best Alpha Talk speaker, which I only say intentionally because Francine is an Alpha Talk speaker as well. Each person is going to bring in something, something different to the table. But the thing about that I think I need you back, even on the show or etc., is to, I've got my homework cut out for me to do a little bit of going back to Marshall Mcluhan 101. When we think about the tetrad of media effects, right? Enhances, reverses, obsolesces, and retrieves. I see a very interesting dynamic coming up, Doc, which is, first of all, there are three layers. One is we have to choose light or darkness. Do we want to help the world or do we want to wreck it? The second is we have to choose our platforms, ultimately. And in some cases, it might be a new technology. I'm live streaming, in terms of the future of over the air and the future of broadcast, etc. So we have to choose our platforms. And the third one is we have to choose the quality of our messaging and whether it is long form or short form, or whether you spoke about the great forgettery as well. So it's not just to choose light or, good or evil. It's choosing the platform, and then within there, choosing the message and the quality of the message, the quality of the relationship, how many people are exposed to it. It is a very interesting time I wonder if Marshall Mcluhan were alive today, how he'd be talking about all of this.
Well, he lived until 1980, and at the end of his life, he and his son Eric, who was a friend, he's gone now sadly, but they worked together on this tetrad of media effects. He said that what computing technology was for was perfect memory. And that's what it is. I mean, I have this rectangle I carry with me everywhere. I used to remember stuff. I remember stuff with this. It's my outboard memory. And I think we use that. I think we usefully, we use our phones and our laptops more to remember stuff than anything else. You and I have been passing notes, as it were, back and forth to each other because we're typing in the background to come up with stuff that we can share. There you go.
I'm trying to take notes because otherwise, I mean, I could go back and watch this 1,000 times.
There's, I think that one of the things to compress it, one of the things Marshall McLuhan said was, and this is in his book, The Message, the medium is the massage, not the message, the massage, that every new medium, by which he meant every new technology, works us over completely. We are different now as digital beings. I mean, I'm lost. I can't live without my phone. I can't live without this watch. This watch is not just, it's got the weather, it's got medical things, it's looking at my heart rate, it's looking at other things that are very interesting to me as a person who's advancing demographically. And but we depend on these things, and my life is much better, and probably I am alive, in fact, because I carry technology with me, and that technology expands me in so many ways. And yeah, this is the tetrad of media effects. This phone enhances my ability to communicate. It retrieves to the telephone. It also retrieves writing, lots of other things. It obsolesces all kinds of things, broadcasting, over-the-air radio, newspapers, magazines, and it reverses into, for example, tribalism. The tribalism we have, the disinformation, all that stuff, those are all what Mcluhan would call reversals. And every single technology, from writing in stone and movable type and horses and all the rest of them, have all these effects. My grandmother, who was born in the Victorian times, she lived to 108, and but she used to talk about the crisis in New York was horse poop on the streets, because her grandfather made carriages for horses in New York. He lived on a farm in Harlem. I mean, this also shows us, that this is one of the reasons I think history moves rather quickly, because I have ancestors who remember. I have a great aunt who remembered when Lincoln was shot, because she was born in the 1850s, and she shared that with our family. So we knew when she said when Lincoln was shot, everything changed, and when Kennedy was shot, I remembered that, or we remembered that.
Well, look, so you are like a fine wine. You are certainly
a wine with an H in it.
Yeah,
wine.
There is nothing rancid about you. In fact, I always have a quote for my guest, and this one, actually, you delivered the quote from Cory Booker. The older I get, the better I was. I think that could be, and most definitely is, true of you, Doc Searls.
That's my past exceeds me. To full credit where due, Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, was a college athlete. He was a football player, and somebody asked him how good he was, and he said, "The older I get, the better I was." And that's true for me with basketball. I tend to think that I was a better basketball player than I really was.
No doubt. I am excited to continue this conversation, whether it's back on the show. I'm going to go and do some Marshall McLuhan recapping and go back to the best of the old, combine it with the best of the new. That's actually the vision I have for Alpha Collective, which is not to just say out with the old, in with the new, but find that balance. But for the rest of you, if you want to find Doc Searls and follow his incredible wisdom, you can do it on the Twitter. You can do it. You can find him on Instagram. When I asked him about Clubhouse or Discord, I said, "What's your
have
username?"
Discord, but
he said, "I'm not
it
sure." So
yeah.
You can try to find him on Clubhouse or in Discord.
I'm probably Doc Searls on both of those. I've never used Clubhouse, but
probably you can find him in MetaBook or Face Meta or whatever the hell they're calling themselves these days. You can experience Doc visually, or you could close your eyes and listen to the dulcet tones. I mean, who could who could forget the wonderful world of Flickr? You're doing some amazing things. And I think one of your fun facts was the fact that you might be the person that has the most number of photographs uploaded online, which I thought was very interesting. You can please go and buy the Intention Economy when customers take charge. Please trust me on this one, and you can take this one to the bank. That if you really want to understand the world, the coming world, and the world as it should be, this is what you need to do. And this is a book that you want to read. That time is coming now. And of course, you can check out Doc's podcasts, Floss Weekly on the This Week in Tech, a little bit of a network, and Reality 2.0 produced independently with Catherine Druckman. There is nothing more to say. There's so much more to say. I take that back. There is so much more to say, but I'm now going to go and try and sell a few passes to the Alpha Collective. But I will tell you one person who will not be buying a pass to the Alpha Collective, don't ask me why, is Chuck Norris. And here's what Chuck Norris had to say about Doc Searls.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
We will be back tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.